The autumn wind carried dust across the barren landscape as Grace Lawson staggered toward the lone ranch house, her swollen belly heavy beneath her threadbare dress, and her hopes as fragile as the dying light of the New Mexico Territory sunset. September 1873 had brought nothing but hardship since her husband's death 3 months prior, leaving her with nothing but a small bundle of possessions and the child growing inside her. The journey from Silver Creek had taken its toll. Grace's boots were worn thin, her face weathered beyond her 22 years. As she approached the sturdy log cabin with smoke curling from its stone chimney, she fought the urge to collapse. Pride was all she had left, and she wouldn't surrender it, not even as her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. With the last of her strength, Grace raised her hand and knocked 3 times on the solid wooden door. A dog barked inside, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. The door swung open to reveal a tall man with broad shoulders and a face weathered by sun and wind. His dark hair fell just below his ears, and his eyes, a startling hazel, narrowed as he assessed the woman on his doorstep. "Can I help you, madam?" His voice was deep, cautious. Grace straightened her back. "Sir, I'm looking for work. Any kind of work. I can cook, clean, mend clothes." The man's gaze dropped to her pregnant belly, then back to her face. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Grace braced herself for rejection, for the door to close in her face as it had at 3 homesteads before. Instead, he stepped aside. "Eat first," he said gruffly. "Then we'll talk, and bring your cradle inside. Nights get cold out here." Grace blinked, confused. "Sir, I don't have a cradle yet." That bundle you're carrying." He nodded toward the small pack that contained her worldly possessions. "Thought it might be. Never mind. Come in before you fall over." Gratitude washed over her as she stepped into the warm cabin. The interior was simple but clean: a wooden table with 4 chairs, a stone fireplace with a black iron pot hanging over glowing embers, and a few pieces of sturdy furniture. A large hound dog watched her from a rug beside the fire, its tail thumping cautiously. "I'm Henry Quinn," the man said, gesturing for her to sit. "This is Ranger." The dog's ears perked up at his name. "Grace Lawson," she replied, easing herself onto a chair. "I thank you for your kindness, Mr. Quinn." Henry moved to the fireplace, stirring whatever was in the pot. "Not much kindness in these parts, just practicality. You look like you're about to deliver that baby on my doorstep, and I reckon that wouldn't do either of us any good." Despite her exhaustion, Grace smiled faintly. "I have another month by my calculation." He ladled stew into a bowl and placed it before her with a chunk of cornbread. "Eat. Then tell me your story, though I only want to hear what you're willing to share." The stew was simple venison, potatoes, and wild onions, but it was the most delicious thing Grace had tasted in weeks. She tried to eat slowly, maintaining her dignity, but hunger won out. When she finished, Henry silently refilled her bowl. "My husband Thomas was killed in a mining accident near Silver Creek," Grace explained after her second helping. "We'd come west from Missouri 6 months ago. Thomas had dreams of striking silver." She twisted her wedding band, now loose on her thin finger. "The mining company gave me enough money to bury him, nothing more." Henry listened without interruption, his face unreadable. "I stayed in town as long as I could, taking in washing and mending. But when the baby started showing, the work dried up." She met his eyes directly. "People don't want a pregnant widow around. Bad luck, they say." "Fools," Henry muttered. "I heard from a traveling peddler that ranches in this area needed help. I've been walking for 3 days." Henry's eyebrows rose. 3 days? In your condition?" Grace lifted her chin. "I do what needs doing, Mr. Quinn." For the first time, a hint of a smile touched his lips. "That makes 2 of us, Mrs. Lawson." He stood and cleared the dishes. "I need help with this place. My housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins, passed on last month. Been managing on my own, but it's not working well." Hope flickered in Grace's chest. "I can start tomorrow at first light." "You'll start by getting a proper night's rest," Henry interrupted. "There's a small bedroom off the kitchen. Mrs. Wilkins used it. Clean sheets on the bed." He hesitated. "I'll ride into town tomorrow, see about getting what you might need for the baby." Grace's eyes widened. "Mr. Quinn, I couldn't possibly consider it an advance on your wages." His tone made it clear the matter wasn't open for discussion. "This ranch needs a woman's touch, and I need someone who can run a household while I handle the cattle." That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Grace offered silent thanks. She didn't know Henry Quinn, didn't know what sort of man he truly was. But tonight her baby was safe and warm, and for now, that was enough. Morning brought the sounds of ranch life, cattle in the distance, chickens clucking in the yard. Grace woke before dawn, determined to prove her worth. By the time Henry emerged from his bedroom, she had breakfast cooking and coffee brewing. He paused in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. "You should be resting." "I've rested," Grace replied, sliding eggs onto a plate. "And now I'm earning my keep." Over breakfast, Henry explained the ranch. The barbecue was modest compared to some in the territory: 40 head of cattle, 10 horses, a small garden plot, and chickens. He managed mostly alone, hiring seasonal help for roundups and branding. "Why no wife?" Grace asked, then immediately regretted her boldness. "Forgive me, that's not my business." Henry stared into his coffee. "I had one once, Catherine. Fever took her and our infant son 6 years ago." "I'm sorry," Grace said softly. "Life goes on," he replied, rising from the table. "I'll be back by sundown. There's a list of supplies I plan to get in town. Anything you need, add it." After he left, Grace explored the cabin thoroughly. Despite Mrs. Wilkins' presence, the place lacked feminine touches. The pantry was well stocked but disorganized. The sewing basket contained tangled thread and broken needles. By midday, she had reorganized the kitchen, started bread dough, and discovered a small vegetable garden in need of attention. The work felt good, purposeful, though she had to rest frequently as the baby shifted and kicked. Henry returned as the sun began its descent, his wagon loaded with supplies. Grace hurried out to help, but he waved her back. "In your condition, not likely." He began unloading crates and packages. "Found some things for the baby. Woman at the general store helped me." In the largest crate was a cradle, simple but well crafted, made of pine with gentle rockers. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. "Mr. Quinn, I can't accept." "Already did," he replied, continuing to unload. "Got some baby clothes too, and Mrs. Peterson from town sent these." He handed her a small bundle of soft flannel blankets. Said every baby needs proper swaddling. Grace touched the cradle, tears threatening. "Thank you, I'll repay every cent. We'll settle accounts later." Henry's voice was gruff, but his eyes were kind. "Got something else too." From his pocket, he produced a small paper bag. Inside was a jar of lavender-scented cream. "For your hands," he explained awkwardly. Notice they were chapped. The simple gesture nearly undid her completely. Grace turned away quickly, blinking back tears. "Supper will be ready soon," she managed. Days fell into a rhythm at the barbecue. Grace kept the house, tended the garden, and prepared meals. Henry worked with the cattle, mended fences, and made repairs to the barn. They spoke little during mealtimes, but the silence was comfortable rather than strained. As September gave way to October, Grace's pregnancy advanced. Her movements slowed, and Henry began insisting she rest more. "The house won't fall apart if you sit for an hour," he told her one evening when he found her mending by lamplight. That baby needs its strength. And I need to earn my keep, she countered, but allowed him to take the mending from her hands. Tell me about Missouri, he said, settling into a chair opposite her. What was your life before? The question opened a door between them. That night, Grace spoke of her childhood on a small farm, of her parents who had died of influenza when she was 17, of meeting Thomas at a church social. Henry listened intently, asking occasional questions. And you, she asked finally, were you always a rancher? Henry's laugh held little humor. Far from it. I was a lawyer in Boston, came west after the war needed open spaces after 4 years of battle and death. Grace studied him with new interest. A lawyer? That explains your bookshelf. Catherine and I plan to build something meaningful here. His voice softened at his wife's name. After they died, I just continued. No plan anymore, just existence. 3 nights later, a powerful storm rolled in from the mountains. Wind howled around the cabin, rattling windows and sending smoke gusting back down the chimney. Grace had just banked the fire when a particularly violent gust made her jump. Storms got you nervous? Henry asked from his chair. The last big storm I experienced, our roof in Silver Creek leaked so badly we had to sleep under the table, Grace admitted. Henry set aside his book. This roof's solid. Built it myself. Another gust sent raindrops spattering against the window with such force that Grace flinched. Henry watched her for a moment, then rose and crossed to the small shelf beside the fireplace. He returned with a worn checkerboard. My father taught me this game when I was young, he said, setting up the pieces. Said it was good for teaching strategy. For the next hour they played by firelight. Henry explained moves and tactics, and Grace proved a quick study. When she captured 3 of his pieces in succession, his surprised laugh filled the cabin. You're a natural, Mrs. Lawson. Grace, she said impulsively. Please call me Grace. His eyes met hers. Grace, he repeated softly. Then I'm Henry, not Mr. Quinn. The storm outside seemed to fade into the background as they continued playing. Grace was acutely aware of Henry's hands as they moved pieces, of his occasional smile when she made a clever move. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt a flicker of something other than grief and worry. The baby chose that moment to deliver a powerful kick. Grace gasped, her hand flying to her side. What is it? Henry was instantly alert. Is it time? No, she assured him, laughing despite herself. Just a very energetic child making its presence known. Without thinking, she reached for his hand and placed it on her belly. Henry froze, his expression stunned as the baby kicked against his palm. Then his face softened with wonder. Strong, he murmured. Like its mother. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. Henry withdrew his hand slowly, clearing his throat. It's late, he said, standing. You should rest. That night, Grace lay awake long after the storm passed, remembering the warmth of Henry's hand and the look in his eyes. 2 weeks later, disaster struck. Henry had gone to a neighboring ranch to help with a difficult calving. Grace, alone at the bar queue, was hanging laundry when 3 riders appeared. Their unshaven faces and hard eyes immediately put her on alert. Well, look what we got here, the leader said, dismounting. Pretty little thing, ain't she, boys? Even with that belly. Grace backed toward the house. My husband will be back any moment, she lied, her hand gripping a clothespin tightly. What's your business here? The men laughed. Husband is it? That'd be Quinn. Word is he lives alone. The leader stepped closer. We're just looking for some hospitality, madam. Food, maybe some valuables to help us on our journey. There's nothing of value here, Grace said firmly, continuing to back away. And I don't feed thieves. The leader's face darkened. Ain't asking, lady. He nodded to his companions. Check the house. I'll keep her company. Grace's heart hammered as the 2 men headed for the cabin. She knew Henry kept money in a tin on the bookshelf, knew these men would take everything of value. But worse, she was alone with the leader whose gaze made her skin crawl. "Such a shame," he said, moving toward her. "Pretty woman like you all alone out here." "Not alone," came a familiar deep voice. Henry stood at the edge of the yard, rifle raised. "Step away from her, now." The leader turned slowly. "This don't concern you, mister. We're just having a friendly chat. Your friends have 10 seconds to come out of my house, and all 3 of you have 1 minute to be off my land," Henry said, his voice deadly calm. "Or I start shooting." The leader's hand moved to his holster. 3 against 1. Bad odds. 2 against 1 now, came another voice as a tall man with a sheriff's badge stepped into view, his revolver drawn. "Your buddies already dropped their weapons." What followed was a blur to Grace, the sheriff and his deputy taking the 3 men into custody, Henry checking the house for damage, and finally, Henry rushing to Grace's side as her legs gave out beneath her. "Are you hurt?" His hands were gentle as he helped her to a chair. "Did they touch you?" "No," Grace assured him, trembling with delayed shock. "I'm fine. Just frightened." Sheriff Miller explained that the men were wanted for robbery in 2 counties. "Lucky I was riding by to check on Henry when I saw them approach. Those 3 have been terrorizing isolated homesteads for months." After the sheriff left with his prisoners, Henry knelt before Grace's chair. "I shouldn't have left you alone. You couldn't have known," she said, "and I'm fine, truly." His hands covered hers, warm and strong. "When I saw that man near you, He stopped, his jaw working. "I can't lose anyone else, Grace. I can't." The raw emotion in his voice made her breath catch. "Henry, I know you're still grieving your husband. I know your child will be here soon, but I need you to know that you have a home here as long as you want it, not just as my housekeeper." Grace stared at him, trying to understand what he was saying. "I care for you," he continued, his voice rough with feeling. "More than I thought possible. When I saw you in danger today, I realized how much." Grace felt tears forming. "I'm carrying another man's child." "A child who will need a father," Henry replied. "I'm not asking for anything now, just think about staying. Not for work, for us." That night Grace lay awake, her hands resting on her belly. Thomas had been her first love, her young love. His death had left a hole in her heart that she thought would never heal. But here, in this place, with this quiet, honorable man, something had changed. She felt alive again, felt hope again. The baby's arrival came 2 weeks later, during a clear, cold November night. Henry rode desperately for the doctor in town, but the baby, a healthy girl with a strong cry, didn't wait. Grace delivered her daughter on Mrs. Wilkins' bed, with only Ranger as witness until Henry returned with Dr. Patterson. "A beautiful girl," the doctor pronounced after examining both mother and child. "You did well, Mrs. Lawson." Henry hovered in the doorway, his face a mix of concern and wonder. When the doctor left, Grace beckoned him closer. "Would you like to meet her?" she asked softly. Henry approached cautiously, as if afraid he might break something precious. Grace shifted the blanket to reveal the tiny face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "I'd like to call her Hope," Grace said, "because that's what she represents to me, and—" She hesitated, gathering her courage. "I've been thinking about what you said, about staying." Henry's eyes met hers, suddenly intent. "I'd like that," Grace continued, "to stay, not as your housekeeper, but to see what might grow between us." His face softened with such joy that Grace felt her heart turn over. Gently, he reached out to touch Hope's tiny hand. "Welcome home, both of you," he said softly. Winter settled over the barbecue, bringing crisp days and long nights. Hope thrived, growing stronger each day. Henry proved a natural with the baby, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he learned to hold and comfort her. On Christmas Eve, 3 months after Grace had first knocked on his door, Henry presented her with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "It isn't much," he said as she unwrapped a silver locket. "It's beautiful," Grace breathed, opening it to find a tiny lock of Hope's hair inside. "I thought," Henry cleared his throat, "I thought you might want to keep a piece of her close to your heart." Grace looked up at this man who had given her and Hope a home, safety, and a second chance at happiness. "I have something for you too," she said, reaching into her pocket. She handed him a folded piece of paper. Henry opened it to find a document and application for a teaching position at the school in town. "You once told me you came west to build something meaningful," Grace explained. "The town needs a proper school teacher with your education." Henry stared at the paper, then at Grace. "You think I could do this? I know you can," she replied. "You have so much to offer, Henry, not just to me and Hope, but to others." He folded the paper carefully. "I'll think about it." Then he took her hand. "There's something else I want to ask you." Grace's heart quickened as Henry dropped to one knee before her. "I know it's soon," he said. "I know we're still learning each other, but I love you, Grace Lawson. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love Hope as if she were my own. I want to be a family, a real family." Tears filled Grace's eyes as he continued. "Will you marry me? Not because you need a home or because Hope needs a father, but because you want to build a life with me." "Yes," Grace whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Henry Quinn, I will marry you." They were wed on New Year's Day, 1874, in the small church in town. Henry wore his best suit. Grace wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Peterson had helped her make. Hope, wrapped in her christening blanket, slept peacefully in the arms of Mrs. Johnson, the shopkeeper's wife who had become a friend. That evening, as snow fell softly outside the windows of the bar queue, Grace placed Hope in the pine cradle that had been her first gift from Henry. "She's growing so fast," Henry observed, his arm around Grace's waist. "Soon she'll need a proper bed. And perhaps siblings," Grace said softly. Henry's eyes met hers, filled with love. "I'd like that very much." Later, as they sat before the fire, Grace thought back to that desperate day in September when she had knocked on a stranger's door, pregnant and alone. How different her life had become in just a few months. "What are you thinking?" Henry asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About second chances," Grace replied, taking his hand. "About how sometimes the end of one road leads to the beginning of another, better one." Henry squeezed her fingers. "When you came to my door that day, I was just existing, going through the motions. You brought life back to this place and to me. And you gave me hope when I had none," Grace said. "A future when I thought mine was over." Outside, the wind picked up, driving snow against the windows, but inside, all was warmth and light. In her cradle, Hope slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge even in her infant dreams that she was loved and protected. And beside the fire, Henry and Grace Quinn began planning their future, a future that would eventually include 3 more children, a successful ranch, and Henry's flourishing career as the town's schoolteacher. But all that lay ahead. For now, it was enough to be together, to have found in each other what they had both thought lost forever. A home, a family, and love strong enough to last a lifetime. As the fire burned low and the night deepened, Grace rested her head on her husband's shoulder, at peace for the first time in many months. From desperate beginnings had come unexpected joy, proof that even in the harsh wilderness of the West, new beginnings were possible for those brave enough to knock on a stranger's door.